Well, good evening. I've got something that I wanted to look into for a while. This comes from a friend of mine who's already had a go at opening it up. This is obviously an Apple keyboard. This is from the Apple wireless keyboard family. This is a version 3, and then they switched to the current Magic Keyboard, whatever nomenclature. The original wireless keyboard is a white and clear plastic job. I had one of those. It used 4 AA cells. The original version of these, so the wireless keyboard 2, used 3 AA cells, and this one uses 2. I've got one of these that works either around here at the office, I'm not sure. I know I've got one at the office. I might have another one around here. But these are scissor switch keyboards. They're fine. I've got to say I'm not super picky, and what I use here most of the time is this, which is a dome switch keyboard, but it's adequate for my purposes. I'm not, as I said, not super picky. I'm old enough to have been around during the buckling spring era, and I hated them because they were so loud. The noise was just no good. Alp switches were fine, that sort of thing. Other mechanical switches were fine, but just the noise of the Model M and all that weren't my thing. So these scissor switch keyboards are fine. I wish they had a little bit more travel than they do. Not that my Logitech is any better in that regard. Anyway, so it's a good keyboard. Lots of people like them. I'm sure the current version is fine too. This keyboard technology is well proven at this point. I think my first scissor switch keyboard was on my PowerBook Lombard. Yeah, that's what it would have been on, which is a 333 megahertz PowerPC. What was that? 605 or something like that? I don't even remember. Based Apple laptop. Quite a big deal at the time, but its keyboard came out quite easily, and it was a scissor switch keyboard. It was great. That whole machine was great. So anyway, this has been bashed open. As we can see, we've got covers, we've got, well, that's going to be game over in terms of trying to get this working. Oh, I've just lost a little screw. So let's see what's happened to this, and let's have an opportunity to have a look inside and see what we've got. So if you flip it over, you can see that this plastic cover went over here. This screw held this board in place. This flexible cable went into here, and then goes through here. If you look, I'll hold up to the camera a bit more. So I've got something to point with. You can see it's been torn off right along there. I did play with this piece to see whether the conductive paths were just sitting on one side, but they're sandwiched between two pieces of plastic. So you couldn't play at trying to reconnect them. This is done. This board's fairly interesting. We'll hold it up here. Try to get the light over a little bit. That's a bit better. It's one of Apple's black circuit boards. One of these modules has to be the USB module. There's a crystal. Maybe this is under here. Might try to get that sticker off. These wires here go to the clicky button at the end. And there's the LED here, which shines through. Oh, can we see it here? There's a tiny, you can't see it, but there's very, very small holes. I can't remember, here maybe? Here, I think, that are laser cut through the aluminum, which there's presumably quite bright LED. One little white plastic guide for it shine through adequately to see whether it's in turned on or whether it's in pairing mode, that sort of thing. We've got a 2009 copyright date on here. Where's the screw? So this is going to be the, yeah, that's the positive side. Yeah, and here we have, let me get something better to point. I got a pencil, that's better. So here's where the screw goes in, which screws into the aluminum case here, and that's got to be providing the negative ground, which is provided, screwed into the back of the aluminum. So works just like a flashlight. Power hold. Some of these, I'm trying to turn it a little bit so the light catches it, but hard to see. So, yeah, this has to be probably this little 8-pin chip here, which I can't, without getting a magnifier, read the number off of, is that's probably the brains of the operation. That's got to be the, yeah, that's got to be the Bluetooth chip. And then I don't know, I'm wondering if some of these traces over here are functioning as the antenna, because we've got a bunch of stuff here, and what looks like a ground plane out here, and then we've got a couple of capacitors coming out to this part here. And that doesn't appear to do anything except go over to the other side. So I'm guessing that some of this stuff in the middle is the antenna, and of course it has to be in the middle because that's where you've got a hole in the aluminum that forms the rest of the case. And there's a little plastic tab that indexes under here when it slides in, but my friends bashed this up so significantly that it doesn't seem to work right correctly. So if you wanted to open one of these up non-destructively, you should be able to get this cable out. It would lie over like that and come into the connector here, so the cable would be coming through like that. You could undo that. Whether you could get this out, the end here, non-destructively, it looks like it's press fit, so I'm not sure you could. But if you know that it might be that once you take this screw out, there's really just this tab holding it in place, and with that knowledge, you might be able to push it out from here. This could probably be unclipped without damaging it. And the reason this got bashed open was because the batteries that were in here swelled, and there was no way of getting them out without removing this. I suspect that's killed more than a few of these keyboards. I am prevented from my probably bad idea of using the little torch as a heat gun for this purpose because it's out of fuel. But I do seem to be having some luck here, so let's continue. What I will probably do is just work these around until something gives way. So with an application of brute force, I pulled it apart. You can actually see on this side where my pushing around move the adhesive around. The other thing that you can see, you can also see where I tried to get under here. One of the interesting things is that the feet, now this is stuck to my, not too much, is that the feet are adhered on the other side of this. So these are the feet. They go through like that. That's really clever because as anyone who's used a lot of Macs from, this was 2009, I think was the date on the board. Yeah, 2009 knows that feet falling off were a significant problem. Well, so the way this appears to work is that there are a series of, let me zoom down a bit. So it looks like these are welded or soldered onto the back of the keyboard. I'm not sure if it's going to be possible to remove this aluminum piece at all. You can see here, well, hopefully you can, this is where the ribbon cable is coming in underneath, and my guess is actually this is not just a ribbon cable, this is probably the conductor that runs underneath the whole board. It's probably all the same thing. Let the foot off. Yeah, I don't think there's any way to non-destructively pull this apart. And in fact, it's already been destructive because you can see the keyboard is up here from this side. And because this adheres to the back of the keyboard, there'd be no way of putting it back in. So if you did want to get this off and thought that you might want to get it back together, you would have to use heat. Sorry, I'm zooming back out so that you can see. You would have to use heat to remove it and not physical force because, as you can see, I wrecked it by doing that there. So the only real solution would be to heat up the whole thing as much as possible with something. I would think an air gun would probably not be the best tool. One of those blankets that they use, like even like a domestic heating pad might get hot enough to just give you enough give, because this is pretty sticky at room temperature. I bet you wouldn't have to heat it up that much to get the whole thing to just release. But then you've got the question of trying to do something with this, and I don't think there's any way to do anything with this. I kind of wouldn't mind getting it off a bit, but you know, it's kind of like with old computers, you would have a million screws under the bottom of the, well, a million, 20, 30 screws under the bottom of the keyboard to hold it together. This is kind of the same issue. But you can actually see the keys coming down, and here are the contact points, right? Let's open one of those up so we can have a look at it. Rather than take the whole thing apart, let's just, let's do this one because it's right here and doesn't have glue on it. So let's nibble the aluminum. There we go. There's the keycap. And so you can see here how it works. So on the keycap you've got, this is the scissor mechanism. And the scissor mechanism here on the back, let's see, can I hold it up? Here we go. The scissor mechanism is just plastic, right? Just two little nylon pieces. But the scissor mechanism keeps the keycap aligned. So it means that you can design a switch here, and this is just I'll zoom in again. This is just a, rubber dome switch, right? But it means that you can design a rubber dome switch that doesn't have to keep the key in alignment, right? It's only a switch, and that probably lets you optimize that. Like, if you feel this little dome switch, it feels like the keys, right? So the key to the whole thing, if you want, is the scissor mechanism, which keeps it aligned, and it just clamps on here onto the metal on the back. So what I want to do is I want to have a look at what the contacts look like under here. Because that's certainly not something I've done before. Get some other pliers before we end up with blood on here. So I'm curious as to whether I'm correct, and in fact the ribbon cable is essentially yeah, it is. I can feel it as soon as I cut it. Well, let's get the dome switch out and have a look at that. So I'll just snip off here and snip off here. Oh no, just a moment, it went across the room, but I saw where it went. Okay, so here we go. Here's the switch mechanism. I think we're missing still one more piece, but where's the little, on the floor somewhere I've lost the little thing that makes the contact. Oh, you know what? I have lost a little piece. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. It's a membrane keyboard. Look at that. There's no way you can see this. You're just going to have to trust me. It's a little contact on one side, a little contact on the other, and there are 3 layers of plastic. They're not touching each other. When it pushes down, they touch right there. It's a membrane keyboard underneath. And so this then doesn't have a little carbon pad on it. Look at that. It doesn't. Look, there's no carbon pad inside. There's just a little piece of silicone rubber which pushes down on that. Well, that's remarkable. Who'd have guessed it? And you can see that these contacts then go out, and if you look at this whole keyboard, I'll just pick one of them to look at by random, you can see that they go out and connect to form a matrix. So yeah, so this just comes off. This is probably just 2 of the layers from the material that's under here. And again, looking out at the top, you can see how the lines are coming off. Can't see beyond there, but so this has been a very destructive look inside an Apple wireless keyboard 3, composed of a number of interesting parts, but the most interesting thing, the thing that I found most surprising, everything else makes sense and was expected. I've now lost the keycap again. It's bounced around here somewhere. So what was so interesting about this? Probably you could get this out non-destructively if you remove this cover, unplug the cable, remove this screw, and then, I don't know, wiggle it out slowly. There's the clip there. This one over here is going to be more of a problem. Nothing you can do with the keyboard itself. It's glued together. It's welded or soldered or something. The whole thing is just, you can't, right? It's just, there's no point. So if there's anything wrong with the keyboard itself, you could replace a keycap, right? These are, you can actually get, not now that I've cut it up, but you can actually, at least on the laptop keyboards, pop these on and off. But more interestingly, from my point of view, is I assumed it was, I don't know what I assumed, but I did not think that underlying this whole thing was effectively a membrane keyboard. I would have sworn that it would just have had a regular rubber dome keyboard, but it's not. It's a rubber dome that activates a membrane keyboard. It was totally fascinating. Anyway, hopefully some of you have stuck around with me because you're also interested by this sort of thing, or interested in this sort of thing. Well, this will go in the trash because, well, not much use to it now. But thanks for watching and have a good evening.